how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. And no April Fool shenanigans this time. No figures. I mean, the figures are right up there. Kong fell over, of course. But yeah, this is my actual genuine thoughts about Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire, or Godzilla Kong, the New Empire, or Godzilla X Kong, the Battle for Earth, or Godzilla X Kong, the Giant Monsters All Out Attack. Okay, I'm done. I'm done making fun of the title. But yeah, no, this is gonna be a pretty spoiler filled episode. I mean, it's been a couple weeks since the movie came out, so I think it's okay to get spoilers out, but I do want to give that, out of the way. Yes, this will contain spoilers, so keep that in mind. And part of the reasons it took me a while, to get this video out is one, because I've had a lot of things going on in my head and my life, such as still having to try to figure out how to fix my car and whatnot. But yeah, there's that. And two is just I didn't know how to really tackle this video because I think a lot of the talking points that people made about this movie, I have been made and I agree with them. Like the movie being fun and uh, whatnot, and even some of the I guess flaws in the movie, like Godzilla's evolved form. Well, I love the design of it when it's like the atomic breath is in use, like the atomic power, I should say, not just the atomic breath. Sorry, I'm looking down because the web camera. I'm trying to focus on the camera, but yeah, it's like I like it when Godzilla's like all powered up and the pink really shows, but when it's just that fleshy color, I'm not too keen into it, but yeah, it's just like I said, I think I agree with a lot of what other people have said, like a lot of other fans, that this is a really fun Godzilla movie. I had a lot of fun with it. And I came in to this movie actually not having pretty low expectations because I remember going to see Godzilla vs. Kong or watching it on HBO Max at 3 a.m. in the morning, because that was during when COVID was still really, really bad. It's still bad, but the governments they're ignoring it anymore. The pandemic is still going on, but you know what I mean. When people were taking the pandemic more seriously, I guess would be best way to put it back. But anyway, I remember watching Godzilla vs. Kong, and I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit disappointed of it. Uh, yeah, a little bit disappointed after watching it, and even I went to see a movie theater right after I had to drive because my local theater was still not open. But yeah, Godzilla vs. Kong, I was a bit disappointed in, and the more time goes on since the movie's release, the more I don't say I dislike the movie more, but it's more the flaws stick out to me too much. And when I first, did like a MonsterVerse ranking of like the 4 films, now it's 5 films, I put GVK above 2014, but as time goes on, I think GVK became my least favorite because it's very bare bones in a way. While the action and monster stuff is fun, there's a lot of it that's just like the human aspect I didn't care for, especially the Team Godzilla part was just completely wasted. It was not a frustrating experience, but like I said, it was definitely disappointing to me personally. It didn't have that Saturday morning cartoon vibes, and you could tell that this movie was kind of gutted. You could have tell that this was supposed to be a 3-hour movie, gutted into less than 2 hours, because there's just a lot of stuff that's left on the cutting room table, and and again, it's not to say the movie was bad, but it was definitely one where I was like, yeah, I wish it could have been different. I wish it could have been better. But when it comes to GXK, and again, I went in with lower expectations because Adam Wingard returns, and again, I've just gone through and said that I wasn't that big of a fan of GVK, and I felt it left a lot to be desired, while it still provided the fun monster uh, spectacle. Sorry, I was tripping over my own words. Also, feel free to watch this as or listen to this as a podcast. It's pretty much just gonna be me on camera. I'm not really editing this one. Sorry, and no scripts. I'm just kind of going off the cuff. But I went in with those lower expectations to GXK, and I came out with those expectations exceed. Yeah, exceeded. It exceeded my expectations, and I think it because someone on Twitter, a mutual of mine on Twitter, I'm blanking on the name, so apologies for that. They mentioned this is what they said on Twitter is that GXK is what I wanted GVK to be. And I could not agree more. I'm like, yes, this is the movie that I was hoping Godzilla vs. Kong would have been. This is what that Saturday morning cartoon vibe that GVK was supposed to be going to, but I felt it was actually executed well here. And I think there's just a lot of aspects that are really improved from GVK. Like Godzilla, while he doesn't have as much screen time as Kong, just like in the last movie, I'm not one of the people that counts the, screen times. And I think it's been said that Godzilla's screen time is less here than it was in GVK, but the difference is it doesn't feel like that. It feels like Godzilla has a presence throughout the film because we go check on Godzilla throughout the film. It's not just Godzilla shows up when Kong's doing something. No, Godzilla's doing his own thing and we check up on him. So we felt Godzilla's presence throughout. So even though the focus was not on Godzilla, and I think the next MonsterVerse movie should have that Godzilla focus because now we have two Kong focused movies in the MonsterVerse. It was nice to, like, hey, we're not forgetting about Godzilla. Like how I felt GVK was kind of like that. It didn't check on Godzilla. I didn't feel like Godzilla was like too reliant on Kong's story and what Kong was up to. And I think what would have helped GVK more is if it had at least just one sequence of Godzilla attacking another Apex facility, whatever. And look at this. This is becoming a GVK review instead of a GXK. So I'm running on tangents, but yeah, that's just my general feelings. But and I'm repeating points that everybody says. To me, something that the movie really felt like, this really felt like that the um 60s, late 60s and 70s Showa era Godzilla movies that people were saying GVK was. I gotta stop bringing up GVK, but yeah, this one actually felt like those Jun Fukuda's. I'm sorry, I did not look this up. Give me 1 second. This might be my one edit throughout the. Yep, no, I was right. Jun Fukuda. I just wasn't. I'm sorry. Jun. Yeah, Jun Fukuda. Sorry, I was mispronouncing the name, but yeah, it felt like his directorial Godzilla movies. Even though a lot of people were comparing GXK to Godzilla vs. Megalon, which I don't disagree with. I think it has a lot of aspects that are similar to Godzilla vs. Megalon. To me, it felt a lot more similar to Godzilla vs. Sea Monster. I mean, both have Mothra in it, and also kind of fitting too, since Godzilla vs. Sea Monster was supposed to be a Kong movie. But the reason why I said it really feels like that one because we are focused on a smaller human cast, like a core human cast this time around. And it just feels that like island adventure sort of type of movie. And yeah, that's the aspect that I wanted to talk about. And plus, both of them sort of have like a lot of monster shenanigans throughout. Uh, especially in GXK, um, with Kong, that has a lot of kaiju shenanigans. But this does lead me to something that I want to touch on with Kong's story, or just a Titan story. This is definitely a Titan centric story. No doubts about it. The humans are secondary protagonists in this one. Gia is definitely the heart of it. Gia's amazing. I think, it's great that we actually have a real representation for the deaf community, which is cool, to see in a big blockbuster movie, to have that representation of a minority just be, the highlight of the human cast. But this really was a monster-centric story, and which leads into a lot of visual storytelling, which I think was for a bit a bit of a lost art in the modern blockbuster. Not to say, visual storytelling has died out in big budgeted movies. I mean, look at War for the Planet of the Apes, you know, which I think is a good comparison to make, because War for the Planet of the Apes has a lot of this the story focused on the apes and the humans being either the antagonists or very minor secondaries and whatnot. So there has to be a lot of visual storytelling on that aspect. But like, there is a part where War for the Planet of the Apes, where the apes are starting to talk a bit more. So there's that. Where the Kong apes, they don't talk. The Titans don't talk. Kong does sign language with Gia, but he doesn't really do that with the other Kongs or with Scar King and whatnot. And I think that's a really cool aspect, for it really relies on the visual storytelling, even though it lacks sort of some of the scaled cinematography of 2014 or the really beautiful artistic shots from King of the Monsters. I think it still does a great job with its visual storytelling because it knows that they can't rely on dialogue for these stories, so they really have to rely on the body language for Kong, Shimo, Godzilla, Scar King, Shimo. I'm sorry, Suko. Sorry, Suko, Shimo. They both start with an S, and they have two syllables. They start with an S and end with an O. My brain doesn't like that. I'm terrible with names. But you got a lot of those visual storytelling elements that are present. And just full on sequences where it's just focused on the Titans, no kind to humans and whatnot. And I think that's really cool. It's really cool that we're getting a movie where it's just like, well, we have to jump to the humans from time to time and see what they're doing. They're not explaining over what's going on. We just get to watch and see these creatures, these animals interact with one another, communicate with one another without words and having to use that body language. And it's really cool. I love it. And it brings a lot of character and emotions through these Titans. I think Adam Wingard and team really succeeded on that. And that goes to Mothra too. Mothra is notoriously a hard Titan and kaiju to really give emotions because insects generally don't have emotive aspects to them. And the Mothra pop from all the Godzilla movies, like the Tokusatsu Godzilla movies, it's difficult to emote with her because you can't get any facial expressions, with her. But with King of the Monsters and with GXK, they do a great job giving Mothra like emotions and character. Like how she gives a little nod to Godzilla saying, hey, yep, it's okay. Which, by the way, love that Mothra's back, and I love that she doesn't die. I love that. It's like, oh, Mothra is alive. We're all good. It's all good. But, you know, And I don't even care that they just kind of brought her back through some like resurrection type of magic. So I don't care. Mothra's back. I'm happy. And it was definitely like I was saying before, it's nice that we're getting that very emotive and creative, expression through this visual storytelling that I think that's absent in a lot of modern Hollywood blockbusters. So I'm glad to see GXK really take advantage of movies being a visual storytelling medium. And another thing I like is I know people are a little bit mixed on Shimo, but like, or just what Shimo turned out to be. But I actually really like that tragic nature of Shimo, that Shimo is not inherently an evil Titan. She's being used by Scar King to do evil things. Like, she is a prisoner of Scar King, and Scar King controls Shimo through pain. It makes Shimo inherently tragic. So it's very rewarding when we get to see, her be free of Scar King's reign and join Godzilla and Kong and beating the crap out of Scar King. That faker Scar King. But like I said, I know people were expecting Shima to be a bit more evil, but I like this aspect more. It doesn't feel like tragic, for the sake of tragic. It feels inherently tragic. Like, okay, this makes, I feel naturally sad for Shimo, and there's not something force, that's put into the movie or like put in near the end. Like, wait, Shimo has a family, or she. No, it's natural. Like, you naturally feel sympathetic towards Shimo. Scar King is also a very fun villain. Very evil, no redeeming qualities whatsoever. He just absolutely despises everybody, and he laughs at Kong. But don't worry, he gets smashed. Um, so Scar King was a really fun villain. And again, I'm getting back to points that people really mentioned. Um, I did mention one of the flaws again was Evolve Godzilla's look. Again, I love it when he's like all powered up and the pink really comes out. I think it looks great like that. I think when, his dorsal plates are light up with the pink energy, it looks fantastic. But when it's like that almost pale skin, muted pink when he's not powered up, I just don't care for it as much. It doesn't jive with me that well. Maybe if they were more crystal-like, I think, and they didn't, and that could have been like a darker pink, something sort of like Millennium Godzilla. I think that would have worked really well. Or if they wanted to go more paler, just go full white, but with like aspects of like Godzilla's like dark skin texture. Something reminiscent of how dorsal plates on Godzilla used to be before 2014, when there was that white outline on Godzilla's dorsal plates. I think that could have worked, but just the way they are when powered down, I'm not a fan for. But I will agree that people have been bringing up this on Twitter, is that Godzilla's evolved form didn't necessarily feel that powerful because we didn't get to see why Godzilla needed it. There was not a point in the movie where Godzilla was beaten. I think, and again, I can understand because of how the story plays out. You know, you couldn't really have Shimo go up and fight Godzilla and beat the crap out of Godzilla. It wouldn't have made sense narratively, but I think there could have been another way to say why Godzilla needed this evolved form, and because, granted, it's like King of the Monsters, they had Burning Godzilla make an appearance at the end, but it showed us why Godzilla needed Burning form to beat King Ghidorah. Um, And it was because Ghidorah was beating the crap out of Godzilla. I mean, before it was pretty evenly matched, and Ghidorah only got an upper hand because the oxygen destroyer, you know, got into play in King of the Monsters, thanks humans. Um, they really decided to, it's like, yep, we're gonna interfere and, hurt Godzilla. But even in the final fight, Ghidorah had a lot of instances where he had the upper hand, so Godzilla needed that form to beat Ghidorah. Where here we don't feel that way because the things we see in Godzilla and GXK, he's still on the top. He's still top dog. He beats Skilla like right at the beginning, and then Tiamat shows up and Godzilla wipes before Tiamat. There's just nothing in the movie that said, "Oh yeah, Godzilla needs this." I think maybe an easy fix would then say maybe Godzilla's sick or something like this. Like maybe the humans like they're following Godzilla. They're not really characters like the humans following Godzilla this time around, but they could say, ask like, hey, Godzilla's acting abnormal, or the radiations all over the place. I mean, there's a moment where Godzilla's like extruding radiation. He has like a sort of a blue thermo Godzilla look, but there was no like dialogue that says, it's like, God, there was nothing to indicate that Godzilla needed this evolved form. Like I said, I love the evolved look, but there was just nothing in the movie that said Godzilla needs this look. Uh, I will say, and going back to the human characters though, we got returning characters: Bernie, Gia, uh, Gia's adoptive mom. I forgot her name. I'm sorry, and then Trapper. I love that we're just focused on these four characters. We're not trying to do Team Godzilla or Team Kong, and they never meet with each other. It's just this core group that we care about, and it really shows that I feel like, okay, this is something I really like about the MonsterVerse. For better and for worse, they do actually listen to audience feedback. And sometimes, like I think in GVK, they overcorrected in some aspects or didn't correctly interpreted the criticism, or just like they took like say the criticism of nobody cares for the humans instead of like maybe saying like creating humans we care about, like in Godzilla minus one. They're like, oh, we're just not going to put that much effort into the human cast in GVK. And again, I gotta stop bringing up GVK, but in GXK, again, like I mentioned earlier, they are very secondary protagonists, but no, they're likable. They are entertaining. Gia especially is the heart. I love her, the conflict between her and being the sole survivor of, the I think it's the Iwis. No, I don't think so. But the Skull Island inhabitants, uh, having to carry her culture and then finding her people in the Hollow Earth. And while the adoptive mom, she has to kind of like, oh, I have to like, I might have to let go of my daughter and whatnot, and there's a very compelling conflict, a very natural conflict for that. And I gotta give credit to how they took the direction with Bernie in this one. Bernie was not really that entertaining in GVK. He was that like general conspiracy theorist, and there was a lot of aspects that made Bernie more annoying than funny. But no, this time, I think Bernie was more enjoyable. It made me not dislike Bernie. I won't go as far as to say I love Bernie now, but I will say I don't dislike him like I did with GVK. And I kind of said this on Twitter, but I put a little spoiler flag. But I do like sort of how Bernie is the modern day equivalent of Carl Dunham. I think that's, the producer, the director that is responsible for going to Skull Island and the original King Kong, you know, he's sort of that modern interpretation of the character. And I think that might be a hot take or a stretch to say, but in my way, they're both sort of this like, they're looking for, they're not doing, they don't want to like make these discoveries for the sake of the truth or for the sake of humanity. They're doing it for clout. They're doing it for their own greed and whatnot. And I'll say this is more like the original Carl from King Kong because he also has a redemption arc in Son of Kong, and Bernie sort of has to go through that in this movie, and I do appreciate that because he wants to go to the Hollow Earth, he wants to record, he wants to take footage, so he can post it on his podcast, on his blogs, and get all the views, all the clout, everything from that. And there's even signs, that he's in it for the wrong reasons at the beginning because in his conspiracy podcast, he has sponsorship. He gives a sponsorship for Kaiju Insurance. And he gets mad about Ghidorah Stan 64, which true villain of the Monsterverse right there. But I did love that little Easter egg. I love that Ghidorah still has this presence in the Monsterverse, even years after the movie has come out. But, I love this, like, sort of, this little character arc Bernie goes through, where he has to sort of realize that he may be in it for the wrong reasons, and maybe sometimes the truth is the people, like the general populace, doesn't need to know the truth for the sake and well-being of indigenous people. I do like that aspect. And then there's Trapper. Trapper's just a fun character. I love the concept of a Titan or a kaiju vet. That's a really cool concept. I mean, sure, we've had scientists and doctors throughout the lineage of Godzilla and Kong movies, and they've like, oh yeah, we're gonna check them out, we're gonna study them, but I, I haven't seen King Kong live, so excuse me. So they might have had a kaiju vet there, but generally speaking, even in the Ultraman series, there's not like a specific character that is designated as kaiju veterinarian. That is such a cool concept. And Trapper lives up to that, like this persona of like, he's like, they call him like Ace Ventura in the movie as sort of a dig with his attire and whatnot. But no, he's sort of like this adventurous person that really wants to help wildlife, He has his personality that's really, really cool. And I just love Trapper, and I do love Trapper and Bernie's dynamic. They sort of have a thing going on for each other. I don't know. But I do love that. I love that Trapper's this wild man that's like, you know what? I want to be a vet. Oh, cool. Yeah, but for giant monsters, And I think that's a cool concept. I personally wouldn't mind exploring that concept a bit more in like an original story, a kaiju veterinarian. What a cool idea! I wish it could have been fleshed out just a tad bit more in GXK, but no, I just love that idea, and I love Trapper as a character. He's not a real in-depth character. There's nothing real deep about him, but he's a very charismatic and very entertaining personality. All right. Well, with that said, I've been recording for about half an hour, so I think it's time for me to wrap up. So there you go. Those are my spoilered, unfiltered thoughts about GXK. Overall, I had a real blast with the movie. If you're able to go see it, I recommend you highly do so. I, unfortunately though, I can't recommend you pre-order that the 5 movie set Monsterverse collection that Warner Bros. Is doing because it looks like it's using generative image is for the cover, which is, if you know me, if you follow me on social media, and you know that I'm an artist, you know I do not care for generative AI, especially when it's used on official product like this. So I wouldn't recommend you going and getting that. But with that said, I do still recommend you watch the movie. And even if you dislike Godzilla vs. Kong, I think go give Godzilla x Kong a watch because it might turn you around. Like it did with me. I didn't necessarily enjoy Godzilla vs. Kong that much. I still love it, because I love all Godzilla movies, well, except for the anime trilogy. But I'm like I'm the parent. It's like, oh, I don't have favorites. I love you all, but I secretly do have favorites. And Godzilla vs. Kong is not one of them. But I mean, I like all Godzilla movies. But yeah, I'm just saying though, if you didn't care for Godzilla vs. Kong that much, I definitely recommend, especially you go see Godzilla X Kong and maybe you'll like it more, or maybe you'll just realize, yeah, it's definitely not to my taste. But I still recommend you go watch it. And yeah, like I said, great. I had a great time. Anyways, thank you so much for watching to the end. Really appreciate it. I just love that you put up with me rambling for half an hour. And like always, I hope you have a fantastic day. Take care and shoo watch.